Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the regular board meeting of the Ottawa Catholic School Board of Trustees. Patrick, could you please lead the land acknowledgement, please?
Yes, of course, sir. As we begin our day, we respectfully acknowledge that we are gathered on the ancestral lands and waters of the Algonquin people. We acknowledge their long-standing relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We also pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region from all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home.
Thank you. Welcome, Father Gerard. Big shoes to fill tonight.
There we go. I hear you. So the opening prayer?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this is the month of St. Joseph. So let us begin our prayer in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Good St. Joseph, patron of unborn children, fathers, workers, travelers, and immigrants, obtain for us the grace to be responsive to God's will in our lives, to labor in thanksgiving and joy, because it is an honor for us to develop the gifts we have received from Almighty God. Help us to employ all of our talents and skills as we nurture hope through Catholic education. Help us to work with order, peace, moderation, and patience without ever shrinking from difficulties. Help us to work in a manner that when our life on earth is over, we will not regret time ill spent, talents unused, or good deeds undone. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Do you wish me to continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. We pray for our staff and students, extended family members, especially those who have lost their lives due to COVID-19. Please remember in your prayers the following who have passed away: Richard Martiniuk, land specialist, valued and treasured member of the Learning Technologies Department at the CEC building; Loretta Fonzo, vice chair of the Thunder Bay Catholic District School Board; Robin Reel, trustee, Catholic District School Board of Eastern Ontario; Relino Brinko, father of Mena Kelly, coordinator, leadership development in the Leading and Learning Department, and father-in-law of Sean Kelly, principal at St. Francis Xavier High School, and grandfather of Christina Kramer, teacher at St. Elizabeth School; and Terrence Peters, father of Jennifer Peters, office administrator at St. Joseph High School. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May they rest in peace. Amen.
Amen. Would you like to give your
The saint of the month?
Saint of the month, and then we'll go with the national anthem.
Absolutely. I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to present, if that's okay. So the saint of the month for April will be Saint Kateri Tekakwitha. Her feast day is April the 17th. She's known as the Lily of the Mohawks, and she is an inspiration for her humility, faith, and devotion. Saint Kateri Tekakwitha is the first North American Indigenous person to be declared a saint. Saint Kateri was born in 1656. Her mother was a Christian member of the Algonquin Nation, and her father was a Mohawk. She was born in the Mohawk village, which is now Oriusville, New York. The smallpox epidemic swept through their community when she was 4 years old, and both her parents and brother died from the disease. Therefore, she was raised by her aunt and uncle. The smallpox caused her eyes to be hypersensitive to light, so people called her Tekakwitha, meaning she who bumps into things. In her youth, she came to know the Jesuit missionaries and was impressed with their kindness and faith life. At age 19, she asked to be baptized. After a few months of catechetical preparation, she was welcomed into the Catholic Church on Easter Sunday. She was given the name Kateri, a kind of nickname for Catherine, her baptismal name, after St. Catherine of Siena, another school in our board. Unfortunately, she was treated harshly because of her Catholic faith and eventually went to live in the First Nations community, the St. Francis Xavier Mission on the south shore of the St. Lawrence River, across from Montreal in today's Kanawaki. In the midst of being treated harshly for her religion, her faith and hope allowed her to continue to love God and manifest that love for others. She is a model of the virtue of perseverance in the midst of persecution. She had a devotion to daily Mass, acts of charity, fasting, and prayer. She lived a life of extraordinary faith and virtue, which lives on today in the Kateri Native Ministries here in Ottawa, as well as in our school community. Kateri became a consecrated virgin at the age of 23 and wanted to start a convent for Indigenous women. Unfortunately, that dream did not come to fruition as she died of health complications at the age of 24 in 1680. A number of miracles have been attributed to her intercession, and in 2012, she was canonized by Pope Benedict XVI. She is the patron saint of many causes, such as the environment and ecology. But today, I just want to mention how our school, named after her, honors their patroness. The St. Kateri Tekakwitha School community honors the spiritual and cultural legacy of St. Kateri. They participate in environmental initiatives, they promote the gospel values, and they are committed to ongoing learning about Indigenous cultures. One such way they do this is they divide their school community into 5 houses: Iroquois, Algonquin, Métis, Inuit, and Haida. Once a child enters grade 1, they are assigned a house. This will be their house for their time at St. Kateri. All their spirit days, academic successes, fundraising initiatives, participation in sports or clubs, and charitable activities acquires points for their various houses. Each month, they have an assembly to celebrate their Indigenous patroness and to celebrate the achievements of students who have lived the gospel values and excelled in academics, clubs, or house group activities. They begin each assembly with Indigenous songs and a prayer to St. Kateri. They strive to model their school community on her life, confident of Jesus' love and care for them, and to live that out through their love for others. I want to end this presentation with the perfect prayer in response to Jesus' unconditional love for us and the very last words of St. Kateri on her deathbed. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. If we're ready to move to Canada. There we go, I think. All rise.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. There we go. I just wanted to bring to the attention of the trustees that we did lose two of our fellow trustees, so our condolences go out to both their families and to the Thunder Bay Catholic School Board and the Eastern Ontario Catholic School Board. That our prayers are with the families. So I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight, and we're starting with school department profile, student department profile, and it's a memo from the Director of Education, Mr. D'Amico, introducing our 2021-2022 student trustees. Mr. D'Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually going to turn it over to our two current student trustees, Patrick Bennett and Namir Goni. They will highlight how the election was run this year, and they will introduce our two newly elected student trustees that will be replacing them for next year. So I'll turn it over to Patrick and Namir.
Thank you, Director.
Welcome.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I was just going to go over a quick kind of summary of how the election process worked this year. It was slightly different because it was virtually this year, but the election happened on Wednesday, on the 25th of February, and we were thrilled to have a participant from every single school this year. All the candidates did a great job and they represent their schools super well, but I'm excited to congratulate both Ben and Sarah as being our successors as the new trustees for the 2021-2022 year. The way that it worked this year, similarly to years previous, is that we had an initial round where each candidate had 3 minutes to introduce themselves and give a short speech on why they would be good representatives as student trustee for the board. After that round, the student senate, comprised of all the co-presidents, voted half of the candidates to move on, and the candidates that continued, they went to the second round, which was a quick bullet question round. They had 1 minute to answer a question and then another minute to answer a second question. And all the candidates didn't know these questions, so it's interesting to see them on the spot or quick reactions. From there, once again, the student senate voted 4 final candidates to move on, and all these candidates were exceptional. I want to say this year, it really impressed me. I thought everyone was amazing. And in the final round, they had 2 minutes to answer one final question. And both Ben and Sarah did an amazing job. So I'll pass it over to Naimir to introduce Sarah.
Before I introduce our newly elected student trustees, I'd like to highlight Mr. D'Amico's control of the Meet, because I'm a student, so I've been to a lot of Google Meets over the past few months, and this was the first time. Oh shoot! Did it cut out?
Yeah.
Did I cut out? I think I did, but I'll continue with what I was saying. Mr. D'Amico did a great job with the breakout rooms, and I got a lot of feedback from the co-presidents, and they said that it wasn't confusing at all. So thank you, Mr. D'Amico, for that. Now I'll introduce our newly elected student trustees. First, I'll introduce Sarah, and Sarah's a grade 10 student. Very surprising. I did not know she was a grade 10 student at Lester B. Pearson. I'll just quickly give a rundown of why I thought she was a perfect candidate and why I voted for her. So Sarah, throughout the whole process of the elections, I noticed that a lot of the candidates talked about what they can do, what they will do, instead of talking about what they can do with the current resources and support they've had through their experiences with school, volunteer experiences, employment, and all of that. But what Sarah and Ben and the final candidates did, but Ben and Sarah did an amazing job, was highlighting how their experience can propel them to success in whatever position they want to do, as in their careers. But Sarah and Ben did a great job with highlighting their experience and saying, hey, this is what I've done through my time in high school, and this is what I want to do as student trustee. And then Patrick can introduce Ben.
Yeah, so I'm thrilled to get to introduce Ben as the second trustee for next year. He's from St. Peter's High School, and he's currently in grade 11. And I thought Ben did an amazing job at presenting. He seemed so confident and like smooth and knew exactly what to say on the spot. And I thought he had a super unique story. Like I was actually like very interested and like I wanted to know more about Ben. And I was like just voting on him just after like his first introductory speech. And I remember when we announced that he won the position of student trustee, he had like a big smile on his face and he made like a promise. He's like, I won't let you down. And that really stuck with me. I was like, oh my goodness, like, this is so exciting. Like I'm so glad that I can pass it off to both. I mean, Sarah and Ben are both amazing candidates. Like I cannot understate that. They both are amazing. And I'm so excited to see what you guys do next year.
Thank you. So welcome, Ben and Sarah. You can now schedule your second and fourth Tuesday of the month for the next year. And you may want to cheat by listening to some meetings before the end of the year, this school year, so you have an idea what's going on. I'm going to ask the trustees I'll first give you a chance to say a few words, but this is an interview. It's not an interview today, and it's not meant to be a whole bunch of questions. You start in September. You need to get your heads around the role and understand what's going on. And as I said, this isn't an interview, or you're not on the hot seat this evening. September, maybe, but not tonight. So Sarah, can you have a few comments, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for welcoming and taking the time to meet Ben and I. It's so much nicer to be part of these meetings than to be watching them on YouTube, as Mr. Chair already mentioned. Ben and I were a little nervous coming into this, but we're so grateful to be here. So thank you again. So a little bit about myself. My name is Sarah. Obviously, I'm in grade 10 at Lester B. Pearson. I recently found out that Pearson is one of the smallest, or the smallest, I think, high school of Lester B. Pearson. So we were all very excited back at school to know that our school would be represented closely so high up in the board. I've been a student at the Ottawa Catholic School Board since kindergarten, so I'm very familiar with all of you. I recognize a lot of the names that I see on my screen today, and I'm so grateful that I have been a student here my entire life, because school has become such a strong foundation in my life. It's helped me discover so many of my interests, so many of my passions, such as theater and weightlifting, mentorship. They're all over the place, but that's what I love so much about the school, about this board, is the variety of everything you guys have to offer and the staff that they have to offer. So yeah, I when I realized that this was a position that I could run for, I knew that I had to jump on it because it was one of the best ways that I could repay the school board for everything that it's done for me. And it would put me in a really great position to advocate for those who may not always feel like school is a very rich home environment as though I have felt it. And so I hope that I can work very closely with you, and I will work very hard to ensure that we work around as much obstacles as we can that are facing students currently, so that they can reach the point that I feel that I have of a really safe, homely environment. And yeah, thank you so much again. I look forward to working all with you in the fall.
Thank you. Not to show any favoritism, but all three of my kids went to Lester B. Welcome, Ben. A few words.
Thank you for having me. I hope you had a great day. And Sarah couldn't have said it better. I'm really excited to be here. And like I told Bennett after my speech, I promise I'll give my hardest to not let you down and do my best to represent all 40,000 students in the Ottawa Catholic School Board, because I know that I wouldn't have been where I am today without the Ottawa Catholic School Board, because the Ottawa Catholic School Board made me the man that I am today. First of all, welcoming my family when we came from Cameroon, having nothing here. The Ottawa Catholic School Board embraced my family, helped me, and without them, I would not have been where we are. And I still kept the first jacket, which is one of the greatest gifts I've received. When coming here, we believed we could survive winter with a sweater, because we're from Cameroon and we don't know what winter is. And we're up for a rude awakening our first day in November here. And without that jacket, we would not have made it through the first month. And since that day, I promised I'll work my hardest to give everything back to this school, what this school have done for me, because this school helped me with the breakfast clubs and everything. And I would not be here without the amazing community and support this school have given to me. And I hope to change the school board so every student in our Ottawa Catholic School Board could feel the embrace and the community that I felt and the help they gave me, so that go graduating to this school, every student could really look back and realize that Ottawa Catholic School Board impacted their lives for the better. And that's what I hope to work hand in hand with all you guys to make our student experience better, not only to help them build a foundation, like feeling like a sense of community and involvement in our school, help them with their education and get us involved in our community, because that's what we are in the Catholic School Board. We're a whole family. We're like a family. And I really hope and I know we can work together to make our school board better for our students. And thank you. And I'm very happy to be here, very excited for the opportunity. Like I said, I'll give this position all I have, work my hardest to not let down the trust that Patrick and Amir have put in me by giving me the chance to be here today. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ben. And again, leaving with the favorites theme, you went to Prince of Peace and St. Pat's, and of course, I'm the trustee for those two schools, so couldn't have picked two better people, obviously. I'm hoping that we can meet you in person in September when we're all back at the board table, and then we can have all the informal discussions before the meetings and after the meetings, break bread together and get to know you much better. As I said, this isn't going to be a question and answer that you're not to be on the spot tonight. Mr. D'Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's not to question. I just want to finish with a comment. We'll certainly have an opportunity to get to know the two new student trustees next year. I just want to compliment both Namir and Patrick. It was a student-run election, and it was fabulous. It really was student agency at its best. In the end, they did a fabulous job to select two very deserving representatives of the student body. So I wanted to make sure that we pass on that Namir and Patrick are not done their job as student trustees yet. They are with us till the end of the year. They are running a student senate meeting this Thursday, and they will continue to deal with all the challenges of the pandemic that they've continued to handle so well. So thanks to Namir and Patrick, and we look forward to working with Sarah and Ben next year. Thank you.
Okay, so does any of the trustees have a comment? And as I said, this isn't the girly session tonight. Trustee Armstrong?
Both very good introductions from Sarah and Ben, but I just wanted to say to Ben that I really appreciate how authentic you are. It really comes across. Please stay that way. Don't change. Okay?
Any other comments? Trustee McEwen.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. I just want to let Sarah know I am the trustee for Lester B. Pearson.
Oh, sure. Try to take it.
So anything you need, just you can find me and I'll help you out. Take care and good luck.
Any other questions? Or sorry, comments?
I have one.
Trustee Wood, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, and welcome, Sarah and Ben. It's nice to have you here, and thank you for the great introductions of yourself. Looking forward to getting to know you guys a little bit better and working closely with you. At one point in my life, many moons ago, was a student trustee, and thoroughly enjoyed the experience. And I would say enjoy it because it does fly by very quickly. But it's a great opportunity to give back to students and the community that helped you to be who you are. And I would certainly encourage you, like the rest of us do with our trustee association, to be involved in your student trustee association, OSTA ACO, and take the time to meet your colleagues around the province of Ontario and really get to know a little bit more about the education system in our province. So welcome, looking forward to seeing you in person, and I'm glad to have you here on the board.
Any other comments? Seeing none, again, welcome to the board. I would recommend that you drop in on second and fourth Tuesdays just to get a feel of what the meetings are about. And that way you won't be going into it cold in September. And as I said, I really hope we're back in the boardroom in September. Welcome. Good luck with your role, and you certainly have the enthusiasm. So as Trustee Armstrong, authentic and caring is the best way to come in. So moving on with the agenda, we have no delegations, we have no public session. Can I get approval for the approval of the agenda, please? Trustee Coburn, seconded by Trustee Warren. That the agenda for the regular board meeting of March 23rd, 2021 be approved as presented. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Declarations of conflict of interest. Seeing none. Confirmation of the minutes of the regular board meeting of March 9, 2021. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee McEwen. And Trustee Armstrong. That the minutes of the regular board meeting of March 9, 2021 be adopted as presented. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. There's no unfinished business from previous meetings. There's no trustee motions. Presentation and consideration of committee reports. Mr. Vice Chair, anything to report?
Nothing to report.
No report, thanks. Item L1, presentation and consideration of staff or trustee reports. Memo from the Superintendent of Learning Technologies, re Computer Science and Coding. Welcome, Superintendent Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, it is my pleasure to welcome Catherine Wake, Learning Technologies Consultant, and Carol Aubrey, Elementary Student Success Consultant, to the board meeting tonight. As you know, Ottawa is a technology hub with no fewer than 3,500 tech companies, and though programmers are in high demand, you will note from the presentation that coding encompasses more than just programming. It gives students a way of thinking, planning, problem solving, learning numeracy, and it adds an opportunity for creativity. It is a new and important literacy. Thank you to Ms. Wake and Ms. Aubrey for their time. I would also like to take this opportunity to congratulate Ms. Aubrey on her recent decision to retire. Allow me to thank you for all of your years of service. And with that, I will pass it over to Ms. Wake and Ms. Aubrey.
Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Superintendent Edwards. Good evening, everyone. So I'll wait for the slide deck to go up. Coding
Slow to
progression
load.
slide 2. All right, thank you. Taking a look at this coding progression slide 2, our students have a variety of tools and opportunities that build upon each other each year. Starting from our little kinder friends who use directions to navigate a bee-bot around an imagined volcano erupting with lava made of construction paper and blocks, to students developing dialogue between two characters to tell a story using the Scratch app, into students coding a microbit to identify soil levels and have programmed a water pump to hydrate the plant, and finally moving into our high school students developing apps through HTML code. These are examples you may have seen during your school visits or on Twitter, all of which leverage a type of coding to achieve. These coding skills are scaffolded each year from kindergarten to grade 12, supported by a variety of unplugged activities, online apps, and hands-on robots. Next slide, please. This slide gives an overview of the specific courses and programs that OCSB has in place that identify coding as a tool to meet the expectations of the course. Students have lots of opportunities at all grade levels to engage with coding in a variety of ways. We know coding is being leveraged outside of these specific courses as it supports, for example, the development of learning skills, global competencies within our deep learning progressions, and a variety of other subject areas. Next slide, please. Here are two examples of activities from our specialist high school major courses. On the left, the students are programming cars and making them move. And on the right, they are developing a video game in 3D. If you're looking to follow some classes who are doing really innovative coding projects, these are two great accounts to follow. Next slide, please. In working last year with our researcher, Lauren, we were able to pull some data from the 2018-2019 EQAO student questionnaire for grade 3. The slide on the left looks at the cognitive strategies used in math. Our goal is to use coding to close these identified gaps. Looking at the one in the green rectangle on the left, it reads, I think about the steps I will use to solve the problem. Coding is, at its core, a sequential language that has clear steps that students need to apply in order to solve a problem. The data on the right looks at cognitive strategies used in language. Organizing ideas and editing work are two areas of focus. Working with my grade 2s, I can tell you from my experience that getting them to look over their writing in their journals wasn't an easy task. But having their little cat not be able to move across the screen kept them begging for more time to revise and fix their code. Working at the system level now, I can see students just like my grade 2s in each of our schools. Students who love to code and problem solve their way through it. We ultimately are working to develop in our students the ability to apply these skills to all subject areas. With the engagement strategy of coding, we can hook our students early and keep them engaged while teaching these skills and hopefully strengthening these cognitive strategies. I will now pass it on to the amazing Carol, who will discuss the next couple of slides.
Thank you, Ms. Wake, and thank you for that great introduction, Superintendent Edwards. As you can see, coding is now formally part of the grade 1 to grade 8 curriculum. But at the OCSB, we've been doing coding for a number of years. We teach students to use coding as a tool. Students use coding to meet curriculum expectations in math, but they also use coding in other subjects such as science and language. Coding also teaches students global competencies such as critical thinking and creativity, and other skills such as perseverance, attention to detail, and it teaches them to develop their computational thinking skills. Next slide, please. Kindergarten to grade 6 students are learning unplugged and plugged coding techniques. Kindergarten students focus on directionality and sequencing through unplugged activities. And from grade 1 onwards, students learn more complex coding skills as they progress through the grades. We have delivered coding lessons to NTIP teachers and to more seasoned teachers. As part of STEAM Week in February, we did a live stream coding session that had over 2,000 students coding at the same time. After coding sessions, we emailed teachers lessons so that they can continue coding with their students. As well, teachers can access lesson plans for coding through our OCSB math website that's located on the staff portal. We want the coding sessions to be the start of a coding journey, not just a one-time event. Next slide, please. The feedback that we've received from students, teachers, and parents has been excellent. The common threads in the feedback have been how engaged all the students are in learning and how motivated everyone is in continuing coding. One thing you'll notice is that coding is very accessible to all students. There is a jump-in point for everyone. Students can make their code easy or complex. Every OCSB student has the opportunity to use coding programs that are online or robotics that are available in every school. If you follow our hashtag on Twitter, OCSB codes, you'll see lots of great activity. Thank you. Back to you, Catherine.
This video highlights the authentic learning experiences coding provides our students. It really brings forward that student voice and demonstrates how far coding can take our students. At OCSB, we have been and continue to set our students up to leave our system in a good position to apply for jobs and programs that require the use of coding, which are becoming increasingly in demand in this city and beyond. Next slide, please. To end our presentation is a quote from a grade 7 student that underscores the impact that coding has on our students and our community. Ruth Maley writes, I hope in the future more kids can learn to code because I think it's going to become more of our society and we can learn together. It's really going to make an impact once they learn it. I know it's changed me a lot. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving us time to share our information. And at this point, we'd be glad to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions or comments? Trustee Warren, then Trustee Lawrence, then Trustee Armstrong.
Thanks, through you, Mr. Chair. This is actually an area of great interest. My daughter's signed up for 2 of the courses. So she's going to grade 10 next year, but she signed up for the grade 11 computer engineering course, which she's excited about. But is there other opportunities that that students can go in, learn different languages, you know, C, C++, and all those kind of things? Or is it just one specific type of language that you're working with for the coding?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the answer to Trustee Warren's question would be that there's different types of coding from kindergarten to grade 12. And the wonderful thing about our system is that we support a variety of different coding languages. So, you know, in my experience, you know, the students progress from some unplugged coding with simple directions, and then they move into block coding, which is dragging those blocks in a sequential order. Then they start moving into some JavaScript language, and then they can finally end up with HTML. So again, there's lots of different types of coding, and our board has lots of programs that support each kind of coding that scaffold on top of each other as they work their way through the system. And again, and maybe Carol wants to add on to it, but again, we also have different apps and programs that support many different types of coding languages so that when our students leave our system, they're not just proficient in one type of coding, they're able to use those tools in different ways because there's different codes that they are able to use.
Just a supplemental, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Is it possible in high school that this could lead to co-op opportunities for students? So they maybe take the computer engineering course and then they can do a co-op with you know, somewhere in Canada with all the different high-tech industry.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. The answer to that question is yes, especially with our SHISM programs. There is the opportunity that they actually code with businesses, local businesses in the city. So there is that opportunity rate built within our courses, our SHISM courses in high school.
Thank you very much. That's great.
Trustee Coburn, then Trustee Armstrong, then Trustee Curry. Then Trustee Lawrence.
Yeah, I didn't have a question.
Sorry, it was Trustee. The screen got all mixed up. Every time we stop a presentation, everything shuffles. So Trustee Lawrence, then Trustee Armstrong, then Trustee Curry.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. This is probably for Miss Wake, who I never thought I'd be calling Miss Wake, a graduate of Immaculata when I was there. Tell me, Catherine, Nancy McLaren's grade 2 or whatever, she teaches elementary, that's why I'm asking you. Didn't they do a whole thing on coding and got a medical scan put together? Was that through coding, or maybe this doesn't come into your thing? If not, I'm sorry. Okay, I read that somewhere. I don't know what I'm reading. I just think this is wonderful. I went through the video, and it's just incredible, and it is the future. And I just want to say thank you for, you know, again, another group putting the board front and center and way ahead of many others. And Carol, watch out. I've known that they have recycled people, so be careful. You may not be going anywhere yet, girl. So, like, thank you for this. I was just absolutely fascinated by this when I was preparing for tonight's meeting, and God bless you and all your work. It's great. Thank you. I'm proud of you too, Catherine.
Thank you, Trustee Lawrence.
Trustee Armstrong, then Trustee Curry.
To you, Mr. Chair. Is there any common identifiable difference that we would see with a math lesson plan as opposed to a coding lesson plan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Carol will answer your question.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll answer Trustee Armstrong's question. So math, coding is part of the math curriculum now. So we do have expectations in coding, things like being able to use a loop, being able to make code more efficient, being able to go in and alter a code, and the student needs to be able to tell you what the outcome will be. So that is all part of the math curriculum, but we add to our math lessons coding to make it interesting for the students. So we do a probability lesson, let's say flipping a coin, and that could be done as a traditional lesson with an actual coin, or you could do it with a microbit and have it flip the coin. And the thing about coding is, because the computer can do so many so quickly, you can start talking to the students about things like the law of large numbers, because they're able to see the computer do it 1,000 times, where it would take them so long to physically flip that coin. So,
Through you, Mr. Chair, could I have a follow-up?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So what I think would be cool was you can compare the math and the coding, and maybe get the kids to do a Venn diagram where they have common things and differences with the two different approaches. So yeah, I like it. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to add on to that, and because we've been doing this for so many years, we've been able to build in those mathematical processes before the curriculum even came. So our teachers actually can connect it to a variety of different math expectations, not just the coding ones that are now in our math curriculum. They really go into the mathematical processes that span the whole curriculum.
Great. Trustee Curry?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. To you, I think this will probably be to Carol, mainly because she's high school. I was wondering, is for gifted students at the high school level, is coding a particularly appealing and attractive avenue for them to pursue, or have you noticed that in your experience with them or not?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will answer Trustee Curry's question. I'm actually at elementary, but I can tell you that the gifted students in elementary school are very drawn to coding. One of the great things about it is that you can be creative, you can make things very complex, or you can make them very simple. It's a way that students connect with each other. So for sure, the gifted students in elementary are drawn to coding. I don't know, maybe Superintendent Edwards could say more about high school?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, and because I was a high school principal, I can tell you that there are many opportunities for gifted kids and all kids who are locally gifted in computer studies as well. Competitions, there are girls who code programs, there are girls who game programs, there are competitions that the University of Waterloo puts on, and there's other opportunities too, like MOOCs, with courses the kids can just take on their own. So once they draw an interest, the opportunities are truly limitless, and universities are hungry to get these students into their programs.
Catherine, do you have anything to add?
No, Mr. Chair.
Trustee Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, having had a few of those kids that were gifted, one of whom ended up at University of Waterloo, I know how much richness there is there. I'll say it's got robotics. You forgot that, Superintendent Edwards, the robotics club. But really, the choice that I made to have my kids and have a Catholic education is because the computer has no ethics. The computer has no voice, but the voice we give it to our actions, and that you had social justice as the app development. Could you speak a little bit about that and how the Catholic part of it is there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will answer Trustee Moore's question. I think that's you nailed it, right? That's the power of this program. And I think by the second slide, last slide that we had with that video, those girls coded an app to support loved ones of students with autism in finding resources within the community to better serve the child with autism. So when we think about social justice, the impact is huge. So yes, you know, it seems like a very sequential coding language, but when you put it into the context of what can you do with that now, it really does lead into their empathy and their compassion and really our core values as Catholics. It really just, like Superintendent Edwards was saying, so many opportunities can come from it. So yes, it just seems like a very basic sort of sequential lines of text, but at the end of the day, it's what the students do with it that really impacts the community that they're in.
I would like to add to that as well. In grade 4, 5, and 6, we have the students focus on the UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and they use coding to access some of those goals. So some of those goals are things like clean water for everyone, affordable housing. I think there's 17 goals. And microbits in particular, which every school in our school board has physical copies of, and students can also work on the microbit website without having a physical microbit. Microbits has sustainable goal projects that we really invite the grade 4, 5, and 6 students in our school board to work on. They're thrilled to do it.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, ladies, for your presentation. It sounds like a very interesting and an involving field that's expanding. On that, can I have a mover for the presentation, please? Trustee Warren, Trustee Curry. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Learning Technologies dated March 17, 2021, entitled Computer Science and Coding be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Welcome, Father Peter. Item L2, memo from the Superintendent of Student Success, Intermediate Secondary, leveraging digital to support literacy. Welcome, Superintendent Frendo.
Thanks very much. If Superintendent Edwards could cue up our slides, that would be great. Thank you. We are very, very happy to be here tonight to talk about literacy initiatives. That always makes me happy. Over the past 3 years, our literacy focus has been to provide precise and personalized literacy interventions for students who are not meeting their program expectations. As you know, both LLI and Empower have provided instrumental reading interventions for our students. In addition to these programs, we are also using a number of other strategies to support our students and teachers. Two very powerful digital resources are Raz-Plus and Newsella. Our literacy consultants, Erin Doak and Christina Colasante, will present these two platforms to you. Erin and Christina, slide 2, please.
Thank you. The two digital platforms we will be presenting tonight, Raz-Plus and Newsella, both provide personalized literacy instruction for all learners. Raz-Plus and Newsella allow teachers to implement the elements and the global competencies outlined in the Deep Learning Framework by customizing literacy instruction and changing outcomes for students. Tonight, we will give you an overview of how we can leverage digital to support literacy learners using Raz-Plus and Newsella. There are several benefits and features to these platforms. We will highlight a few key aspects in this presentation. Next slide, please. Raz-Plus is a digital literacy platform available to teachers and students in kindergarten to grade 6. It provides thousands of resources to support both face-to-face and virtual learning. The resources are available both digitally and in print formats. There are several resources available for literacy instruction, such as lesson plans for teachers that support early reading development, reading comprehension, vocabulary, and reading fluency. Raz-Plus contains level books at 29 different levels of text complexity, as well as different genres of text. Next slide, please. Teachers and students engage with Raz-Plus during whole class instruction, small group guided practice, and independent learning. Raz-Plus allows teachers to personalize instruction by providing text based on student interests and different reading levels, as well as audio formats. The audio feature in Raz-Plus makes books accessible to all of our learners. Students have the option of reading the book themselves or using the audio feature to listen to the book. This feature enables students to engage in classroom discussions about a text regardless of their reading level, thus enhancing collaboration and communication among students and deepening critical thinking. Raz-Plus includes a variety of instructional resources to support key reading skills. For example, decodable books, which are recommended for early readers. Decodable books are carefully sequenced to incorporate words that are made up of specific letter sound correspondences that have been previously taught, allowing emergent readers to practice phonics skills in connected text. In addition, after reading and listening to books online, students are prompted to answer reading comprehension questions and check for understanding. Another feature Raz-Plus has that's amazing is the reading benchmark assessment. This feature helps teachers determine what reading level their students are at. It allows students to record themselves reading a text and provide an oral retelling of the book and respond to questions. Teachers can then listen to the recording and mark the assessment. This is a game changer for teachers, especially in the virtual classroom where it can be more challenging to engage on one-on-one assessment with students. In addition, teachers in the virtual program who teach English language learners also have access to the ELL edition, which include additional resources. Furthermore, the parent portal feature allows parents to be involved, and they can view their child's progress and send encouraging messages to their child. Next slide, please. Raz-Plus allows teachers to personalize instruction by providing resources to support individual student needs. The ebook annotation features encourage students to interact with the text. For example, students can highlight new words or information as well as look up definitions right in the program. They can also record themselves reading the book and play it back to hear their fluency. When students enter the Raz-Plus portal, they also have access to a digital library called the Reading Room. This contains thousands of books where students can engage in reading for practice and enjoyment. Students can search for books based on their topic of interest, providing choice for students during independent reading and increasing motivation in reading. Raz-Plus also informs teacher instruction with data. The reports feature provides student data in graphs and charts that show teachers what specific skills students need to work on as a class as well as individually. Teachers can then plan instruction accordingly. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Christina. Newsella is an online cross-curricular platform that allows students to read a broad range of digital texts at different reading levels. So what this means is that every student in the class can be reading the same text, but at their own reading level. This creates an inclusive classroom where all students can participate in the same discussion as their peers, rather than students reading different texts based on their levels. What students really love about Newsella is that it engages them in current events. So for example, last week, Newsella produced articles on how to be an ally to the Asian community in response to the rise in attacks we've seen this month. So it really engages students in reading and critically thinking about real and complex world issues. These articles are sourced from over 100 of the most trusted names in publishing from around the world on a daily basis. And similar to Raz-Plus, every article comes with reading comprehension questions in multiple choice format and a customizable writing prompt. The platform also provides pre-made lessons for teachers, professional development opportunities and webinars, and ongoing and live support from the Newsella staff. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we've listed a few of the many ways Newsella is being used. I'm going to highlight a few. Newsella supports the board improvement plan by providing personalized and precise literacy instruction. So as mentioned, teachers can level the reading text to meet the students' needs. And the data that's collected from each multiple choice question allows teachers to see which literacy skills the students are having difficulty with and which ones they are excelling in. Newsela also has the feature of filtering articles by literacy skill. So if the teacher can see that a student's having difficulty with articles exercising the skill of finding the main idea, then the teacher can choose articles that allow students to practice more of that. For this reason, it has been a central tool in preparing students for the Ontario Literacy Test this year. Not only can you read and respond to the same types of texts as those found in the literacy test, but you can also filter articles by literacy skill and have students practice those skills on a daily basis with relevant texts that they're engaged in. Newsela has also partnered with Pear Deck, which is a Google Slides add-on that allows teachers to create engaging and interactive lessons. And now teachers can subscribe to receive what they call daily decks, and it's where Pear Deck uses current Newsela articles and provides ready-to-use interactive lessons for teachers every Monday. Next slide, please. As mentioned before, one of Newsela's greatest features is that it creates an inclusive learning environment where students can see themselves and their interests reflected in the curriculum on a daily basis. Through the data collection, the learning is visible to the teacher, and then they can plan for each individual student. Research shows us that volume, choice, and voice in the classroom are some of the keys to developing the literacy learner. Newsela gives students choice and agency in what they are reading and increases the amount of reading both in class and at home. And speaking of home, Newsela helps build learning partnerships with parents because it is accessible at home with the use of internet, or there's an app that also can be downloaded on their phones. Newsela is really creating a learning environment that is driven by curiosity, where learners can read about real issues of relevance to themselves and the world. It is getting students to think like global citizens by considering and critically reflecting on the diverse values and worldviews and complex world problems that impact their lives. Next slide, please. A lot of PD was put into supporting teachers with this platform. We hosted several webinars for teachers as well as directed them to the ones that are built into these platforms. We provided asynchronous and synchronous professional development. For example, when we first launched Newsela last year, we traveled to schools training teachers, but since the pandemic, we've provided live virtual PD, which has been recorded and shared with teachers to use on their own time. We also host weekly office hours where teachers can drop in and ask questions or play with different functions of these tools with us. And we continue to provide one-on-one consultations for those who need individual support or to co-plan how this tool can be used to support ESL or ELL learners, or how you can use different pedagogical practices like guided reading or creating choice boards in the classroom with Newsela. And finally, we've provided how-to videos for these platforms. So for example, on the English and Literacy website, there's a series of how-to videos that support teachers in all subject areas using the tool for the Ontario Literacy Test. Next slide, please. So as you can see from the teachers' feedback in the classroom, these platforms are serving the needs of literacy learners, especially the reluctant readers. Teachers are loving the ability to differentiate and personalize literacy instruction, as well as the versatility these platforms offer in engaging students with relevant text. Two of the leading literacy experts in North America, Penny Kittle and Kelly Gallagher, have said, "Our best work happens when we align our instructional decisions to our students' strengths, when our children become our curriculum, their actions, our data, their potential, our standards. These student-centered digital platforms allow us to do just that." Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing us the time to present these digital platforms to you tonight, and we now welcome any questions you may have.
Welcome and thank you. Very informative report. Any questions or comments? Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment and then a question. Just can't help but think how I used to love going out to the bookmobile and actually having a bookmobile card and going and picking my my books off the shelf, but we've come a long way. So my question is, how can you engage a parent who may not be very familiar with Raz-Plus?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will answer Trustee Armstrong's question. Some of the ways that we've engaged parents with Raz-Plus is through the use of Screencastify, actually. So I did a Screencastify for teachers to share with their students and their parents, especially in the younger grades in elementary. It's hard for, for me to, as a teacher, to say, go to this place in the platform and do this. So I created a Screencastify, which I shared with the teachers, and then they could share that with parents, showing them how to use Raz-Plus, exactly where they needed to go. It was only a few minutes. And then they can always go to the website, and their website is phenomenal. It has so many video links and further information. So that's one of the ways we've done it. Also, when I was in the classroom teaching, we had Raz Kids and we've moved to Raz-Plus, but it was something that I spoke about during the Meet the Teacher night or program night. So.
Thank you.
Trustee Curry, then Trustee Coburn.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe this might be for Christina. I know it was a high-level presentation, but in one of the slides about Raz-Plus, it said it provides intervention resources. Could you give a little more explanation about what an intervention resource is, how that would come about, and what that might be?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair, I will answer Trustee Curry's question. So Raz-Plus, as you heard, and we tried to condense it as best we could, has thousands of resources. And one of the resources they have is actually what they refer to as decodable passage packs. And it's an intervention material, and it follows the Organ-Gillingham scope and sequence for phonics instruction. So they have that right in there. And what it is daily lessons for teachers to use with struggling readers, early struggling readers, grade 1, grade 2, that follow a specific sequence in teaching phonics, and then they go and they read those decodable books, which follow up and provide practice with those sounds.
Okay, thank you.
Over to me.
Sorry, Trustee Coburn.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. As somebody who gets lots and lots of digital content on a daily basis, I can appreciate this. My question is, so I think I understood that this is used in particular for maybe reluctant readers or children who are struggling. How widely is this used across, say, classrooms or the board with other students as well? Because I would think obviously these are good resources, not only for reluctant readers, but for people who enjoy reading as well.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the answer to Trustee Coburn's question is, as of now, all of the 7 to 12 schools, and I can speak to 7 to 12, all of the 7 to school 12s are currently using Newsela, including McHugh and St. Nicholas, and they are using them cross-curricularly. So I even had a math teacher reach out to me to ask how to build a unit where they're incorporating literacy throughout math, and Newsela provides those type of articles. So we do know that it's being used in geography, math, science, and in some cases, even phys ed classes. So that's the great thing about it, is that it's an all hands on deck approach to literacy.
Good, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to add to that for Raz-Plus. So, and Newsela, at the elementary level, all of our schools are using Raz-Plus. We have about 715 active classrooms. So it's not just for the reluctant readers. We just find that these programs, because there's so many accessibility features like the audio format and the leveling of the text, we can reach more levels of students and differentiate instruction more easily. But all of our schools are using Raz-Plus, and we have 50 schools using Newsela in elementary.
Good, thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much, ladies, for your presentation. Very informative. Glad to see it's used. I've seen it in a presentation when we were giving the MP for Ottawa Vanier a tour with the former director, Denise Andre, and it's quite powerful. So thank you very much. Can I have a mover for the motion, please? Trustee McEwen and Trustee Simpson? That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Student Success, Intermediate Secondary, dated March 17, 2021, entitled Leveraging Digital to Support Literacy, be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, ladies. Item L3, memo from the Superintendent of Student Success, Intermediate Secondary, innovative strategies for teaching science in a pandemic. Superintendent Frendo, welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to be back. We're very pleased to have the opportunity to tell you about teaching science during a pandemic. As you know, science is a very hands-on subject in nature, and COVID has presented some challenges in the experiential aspects of science courses, both for our in-person students, because COVID protocols for sharing equipment and working together are a bit of an obstacle, and for our students in our virtual program. So Rob Kopp, our coordinator for student success, and Jennifer Gauthier, our consultant for science and also phys ed and business, will tell you about the creative solutions being used to teach science this year.
Thank you so much. So I would like to begin by drawing, thank you. I'd like to begin by drawing your attention to the image on this slide. It shows a makeshift document camera rigged by a teacher at Holy Trinity to assist remote learners examine the behavior of light passing through a convex lens. This image speaks to some of the unavoidable challenges science teachers have faced, but also highlights their quick ability to pivot and respond innovatively. Next slide, please. The science department heads gathered virtually in late August to assess how the new OCSB COVID-19 guidelines for science laboratories would impact classroom lab inquiry for the upcoming year. We discussed new constraints, such as keeping the students properly distanced, the need for teachers to purchase or pull out more science equipment as a result of moving group tasks to individual ones, the need for teachers to set up equipment at each individual lab station rather than having students retrieve and set up their own equipment, the need for students to be trained to clean and disinfect their own equipment, and the need to embed sufficient class time for cleaning and disinfection of equipment after student use. The leadership group then collaborated to adapt science lab safety documents and protocols already in place to include enhanced COVID safety. Examples include the lab cleaning procedures document and the science safety agreement document, which were vetted by our health and safety officer, Chantal Mazerol. A series of OCSB lab safety videos were also created to assist science teachers to train their students on enhanced lab safety. Next slide, please. The science department heads also brainstormed ways to ensure key skills of scientific inquiry could still be met. Collaborative subject teams worked to create a priority labs resource for their course. It contains labs identified as being fundamental to addressing expectations or building skills necessary for subsequent courses. Equipment and safety considerations are provided, along with suggested alternatives for each lab listed. The sharing of science workspaces was another strategy to integrate activities for students to explore, discover, and apply new concepts in a variety of COVID-friendly ways. This was especially helpful for many new to science virtual academy teachers who had not yet taught the course in person or had many opportunities to network with other students. A professional learning opportunity for virtual academy teachers was offered in November to highlight helpful online resources, digital tools, and experiential learning opportunities for remote learners. Finally, dialogue around meaningful assessment was shared. Adjustments to the learning environment and cohorting students spurred the need and desire for teachers to re-examine traditional ways to gather evidence and evaluate student learning. Numerous board consultants collaborated to create the Planning for Digital Final Evaluations document as a framework to support inclusive and equitable assessment practices. science teachers were invited to submit RST examples by course, resulting in a rich variety of assessment tools. This sharing, along with the other efforts described so far, allowed for stronger science networks to be developed between schools. This enhanced science collaboration is a positive benefit that may not have been realized outside of COVID. Next slide, please. This slide lists some of the most popular science-specific online resources and digital tools that have been promoted among teachers this year. They're all noteworthy, but to stay on time, I would like to focus on gizmos. Gizmos are interactive simulations that use an inquiry-based approach to learning to build conceptual understanding. Teachers can search over 400 gizmos aligned to the Ontario curriculum by grade and topic or by expectation to help bring powerful learning experiences to both in-person and virtual classes. OCSB educators have been using gizmos to empower student learning for over 10 years, and we have recently renewed gizmos for grades 7 to 12 math and science teachers. Next slide, please. Gizmos are designed to allow for extensive manipulation of variables and what-if experimentation. For example, in this Growing Plants gizmo, students can investigate what happens to plant growth when the amount of water, light, or type of soil is manipulated. So if we could play the video, you can drag, so you can drag the seeds, the type of soil, the fertilizer, the compost into the pots. You can change the number of lights and the amount of water for each plant. And in this case, bean plant height and mass data is generated to compare 3 pots with the varying types of soil. Visualizations and graphing tools help capture and compare results from the experiments. Each gizmo has a set of lesson resources, such as the student exploration sheet, answer key, teacher guide, and vocabulary sheet. The student exploration sheet is available in Google Doc, Word, and PDF format, and Google's Gizmos has expanded to include STEM cases, which allow each student to take on the role of a STEM professional to solve a variety of real-world challenges. The Gizmos library also contains many additional resources, including French translations and lesson adaptations submitted by educators around the world. Next slide, please. So now that you know a bit about Gizmos, I'd like to share some feedback. This particular quote is from a grade 12 physics teacher in the Virtual Academy and accurately reflects feedback I've received from many face-to-face and virtual OCSB science educators. Gizmos has significantly helped to offset the challenges of conducting in-person labs, has enhanced student engagement, and fostered critical thinking and collaboration skills within the learning process. Next slide, please. The next quote is from a grade 12 physics student in the Virtual Academy. Her level of engagement was enhanced through collaboration and inquiry. Using Gizmos allowed for differentiated instruction away from traditional teacher-led lessons. It allowed this student to play, explore, experience aha moments with her friends. Using Gizmos has enhanced this student's level of enjoyment and confidence in meeting the desired learning outcomes, which ultimately enhances student success. Next slide, please, and Rob will be speaking next.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Many of our science-related presentations and competitions have also been transitioned into the virtual environment. The video here shows students from Lester B. Pearson who placed first in Eastern Ontario and third provincially in a recent Ontario Skills paper gliding competition. Students have been able to take part in virtual fairs for STEM or STEAM, as you would have heard in detail in previous STEAM presentation to the board. Also, additional support is provided to allow schools to participate in science field trips being offered virtually by numerous organizations, as you can see listed on the slides. Next slide, please. We continue to offer professional development to support teachers in a variety of ways. School memberships were purchased to to access online resources and professional development opportunities from the Science Teachers of Ontario. Jennifer continues to organize or lead professional development, both live and recorded, on the use of digital tools like gizmos, as she explained in detail. Currently, 50 grades 7 to 12 OCSB science teachers are learning about using climate action kits from Inksmith to explore climate change through inquiry, coding, and project-based learning. And as you heard earlier this morning, or not this morning, earlier this evening, pardon me, from the coding session, that involves using microbits, and it's the same climate action kit. So you can see how things are extending across the curriculum areas. So this three-part series for the OCSB teachers on the climate action kits began last week. It continues tomorrow night and will wrap up next week. And as I said, there are 50 of our teachers that are participating in that. So thank you. That's all we have for now, and we'll turn it over to questions.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments? Trustee Coburn.
So a comment, not a question. Where were gizmos when I was studying science in high school? Yeah, you know, the delivery, but on a serious note, the delivery of education or content is so important. So Jennifer and Rob, and it's not we probably don't have empirical evidence, but can you speak to the actual delivery mechanism of some of these things like gizmos and the interest maybe in students in terms of science and that? Is there a way to measure there's more interest or less interest or what? But anyway, maybe just speak to how gizmos has maybe attracted more kids to some of the science fields or the interest they share in it, because it certainly would have made my life a lot easier going through high school.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the gizmos, I don't have empirical evidence that shows that there are more students coming to science because of gizmos, but the gizmos, much like the coding, provide that immediate feedback for students. So as they're engaged in an activity, they get that immediate feedback and immediate data collection, which is really an engaging way for the students to interact with the curriculum. And as Jennifer has indicated, the gizmos themselves are mapped closely to the Ontario curriculum, grade 7 to 12, where we are using it. So teachers can go in and select a particular expectation, find gizmos related to that expectation, and then plan a lesson around that for the students.
Thank you.
Trustee Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I share Trustee Coburn's disappointment that the gizmo wasn't around when I was taking science. I think I would have done better in it. In any case, I was just wondering to either Robert or Jennifer if you could explain, and one of your sites sort of quoted a grade 12 student as saying she was working with her friends. How does Gizmo help students collaborate? How does that process work? Because collaboration, as we know, is very important in learning.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to answer Trustee Curry's question, the collaboration takes place through, if you're in the virtual academy, a breakout room, which we can now use with small groups to discuss the gizmo as it's being utilized by all the members of the group. There's a lot of utilization of Google Docs to document some of the observations through the gizmo data and analyze that data, make connections. They could do even a flip grid to record themselves describing their understandings and further wonderings after completing the gizmo. So you can definitely delve deeper and collaborate with friends to come up with different experiments based on your results. The nice thing about gizmos is that they're so easy to manipulate that you could change so many variables and really delve deeper with each inquiry that you do.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two questions. The first is, in labs, traditionally, the default is pair work. Is that still the case in the pandemic?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to answer Mr. Armstrong's question, Trustee Armstrong's question, Yes, we can still conduct partner work in in-person settings. The physical distancing has to be maintained. So for example, in a physics lab, you might need one student who is utilizing a stopwatch to do a timing exercise, and the other student is dropping a ball or manipulating some other form of equipment. So as long as those two partners are physically distanced and they're not sharing the same equipment, then there is the potential for partner work. Most of the sorry,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say most of the teachers also opt for setting up the equipment in advance, having individual students run through that lab exercise, disinfecting their equipment. The students do that, and then the next wave of students, the ones that were waiting, rotate. So it's kind of a rotational basis.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, my second question. Trustee Coburn talked about the virtual labs, and I've actually done the gizmo titration, which is really excellent. But I can't help myself to ask, is the traditional titration still being done in the classroom?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to answer Trustee Armstrong's question, yes, we're definitely having multiple conversations as a collective team of department heads, and sometimes teachers are welcomed into our discussion to ask about some of the challenges to running certain labs and troubleshooting tips. So in a titration experiment, often you use 2 pairs of hands, but you can adapt the lab to just be one person. And further to that, I think the students at this point in the year are very comfortable with disinfecting and sanitizing, whereas at the beginning of the school year, it was a new concept and a lot more unknowns with traveling between classes and working within a classroom setting. So I think at this point in our quadmester, we're doing pretty well at helping teachers and students become more comfortable with the hands-on in-person labs.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Trustee Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me a second question. I was just wondering to Jennifer and Robert, and this would probably be anecdotal, but in any case, I think I am, and I think everyone in the education community is concerned that because of the pandemic, our students this year will be facing a learning gap. And it seems to me in science particularly, where things are based one upon another, any learning gap would be a hardship. So I was just wondering from the two of you, do you think in assessing where your students are now or where they're going to be, is there going to be much of a learning gap in science for the students as we go into next year? Or do you think because of Gizmo and all these other programs, learning platforms, that learning gap is more imaginary than real? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to answer Trustee Curry's question, I think this has offered an opportunity to teachers to really critically examine the learning material and try and target the big ideas, because the delivery is so important. We have less time. Sometimes students are working remotely. There are so many factors that I think that teachers are really working together, which is why I highlighted the collaboration piece. They're really working together to run a very rich course with sometimes less time in order to do so. So that aspect of things, I think, no, the learning gap would not necessarily be a factor. And continued work with the subject teams, like similar teachers who teach similar courses and share materials. We're also trying to collaborate on experiential learning opportunities. So to connect the learning to the outside world, we're bringing in STEM career panels for students to kind of see the life beyond high school and imagine what they could be doing. And I think that motivates students as well. So with all of the continued opportunities that we're still being able to sometimes do better virtually, to be honest, to have these career panelists from British Columbia or other far-reaching places across Canada be able to join us. It's really wonderful.
And through you, Mr. Chair, if I can build on that, just all of our courses, but in particular science, we really emphasize the research, the critical thinking, and the problem solving. So moving forward, we hope our students are critical thinkers and will be able to perhaps close any so-called gaps that exist moving forward. We want them to be thinkers and be able to critically analyze the material that they're working with, and they were well positioned to be able to address future grades. So we hope that the pandemic hasn't set us back in any way, shape, or form, and we don't think it will be the case.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Rob and Jennifer, for your presentation. As Trustee Coburn said, him and I went to the same high school, different years, but yeah, it would have been nice to get the kids more involved in the students involved in actual. I'm a very practical, very visual learner, so I absolutely agree with what Trustee Coburn said, rather than an equation or reading out of a book. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Armstrong, Trustee Moore. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Student Success Intermediate Secondary dated March 17, 2021, entitled Innovative Strategies for Teaching Science in a Pandemic be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item L4, memo from the Superintendent of Human Resources, Human Resources New Hiring Practices and Conflict of Interest Policies. Superintendent McCabe, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I do want to begin tonight by thanking the many trustees who provided input on these two policies that we'll take a look at. Your eyes and input on these documents was extremely helpful. And tonight I am pleased to be joined by Valerie De Silva, Manager of Human Resources, who you have all met before. Valerie has taken the lead on preparing these policies, and I do remind trustees that we're bringing them tonight because the ministry has asked us to have these policies in place by March 31st. I will invite Valerie now to say a few words about the policies, and then Mr. Chair will be happy to take questions.
Thank you. Welcome, Valerie.
Through you, Mr. Chair. These policies have been drafted with ministry language from PPM 165, as well as through research on work that other school boards have been doing in this area as well. We have shared these policies with our union groups and also received their feedback, and they have been supportive of our work. These policies will enable us to continue the work of the HR department and continually building a fair, diverse, and inclusive workplace. And we would be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Questions or comments? Trustee Curry, you got it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just through you to Superintendent McCabe and to Mr. Silva. I still think that in administrative section number 9, with regard to the conducting your interviews, I still think it should be a requirement that everyone doing the interviewing should have the bias awareness training. I know in feedback from that I received that you said sometimes it would not be possible because the principal might not have access to that training yet because the principal might be new. I still think that for the policy to be really effective, everyone doing the interviewing should have that bias awareness training. And anyways, that's just my thought on it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we appreciate the comment. The ministry has asked us to have the policy in place by the 31st, but has given us time to implement each of the aspects of it. So certainly it is our intention to do the bias awareness training with our interview teams and so on. And thankfully, as I said, time has been built in so that that training can happen. And certainly that is our plan to proceed in that direction.
So,
Trustee Curry, you're putting your mic on and off. It's off right now.
Oh, sorry. So Superintendent McCabe, you're saying that the plan really is to have both of the interviewers, or how many are interviewing, have that bias awareness training, if at all possible?
Through you, Mr. Chair, exactly. That is our attempt, to have those who are in the interview process get the training that is identified in the policy. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Moore?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Silva, very much for your comments back. I appreciated that. And thank you, Superintendent McCabe, for taking into account our comments. Zipping through the conflict of interest policy, I just noticed there's a small problem in the policy section, because number 7A through I is so very interesting. It actually does catch your eye. Then you go straight to number 10. So just a small little missing two things, but great policy. Thank you very much.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the feedback, Trustee Moore. We'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments? Trustee Whitted?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Superintendent McCabe. In the hiring practices policy, we mentioned there's language around a monitoring plan and how we'll track progress on this. Can you give us a sense of the vision might be for that, if it's something that we would develop in-house, or if it's a ministry prescribed way of tracking?
Through you, Mr. Chair, could the trustee just explain what exactly you mean in terms of what part you are referring to, please?
I think it was number 8. There was they're committed to developing a monitoring and evaluation plan to review the effectiveness of the policy. So is there a ministry prescribed, monitoring plan that we've got to put together to track how this is working, or is this something we would just do in-house?
I'll defer to my manager, and then I will come back if Valerie's not sure. Thanks, Valerie.
Through you, Mr. Chair. When you look at the PPM, there is the same amount of language around the need to set up a monitoring and evaluation plan, but the process for designing what that's going to look like will certainly fall to each individual school board. And so that, in terms of the work that we'll be doing there will be some elements that we'll be looking at in terms of how we're setting up the policy now, and then how we implement the procedures. So, for example, really the focus on that will be around identifying measures to evaluate the effectiveness of this new hiring policy, and then determining how we can set in place milestones and timelines along which to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments? Trustee Armstrong.
To you, Mr. Chair, just related to the hiring practices policy, I just wondered, when you developed the policy, did you consider requiring periodic theological and faith formation updating of Catholic educators?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we certainly, in our hiring practices, we appreciate that the policy does allow for denominational rights, that we can certainly hire those who are appropriate for our school board. We have ongoing, formation of all employees that happens. So there's nothing specific in the policy, but we would certainly implement what we know we can implement in terms of our denominational ability to hire those to our school board who we're trying to attract.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for your presentation. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Coburn, seconded by Trustee Curry. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Human Resources dated March 17, 2021, entitled Human Resources New Hiring Practices and conflict of interest policies be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Memo from the Superintendent of Student Success Elementary, extended day program fees for 2021-2022. Welcome, Superintendent Montgomery.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. This memo is to be received tonight.
Thank you. Can I have a mover? Sorry, is there any discussion or questions? Trustee Coburn, question?
No, I was going to move it.
Okay. Seconder? Trustee Simpson? The memorandum from the Superintendent of Student Success Elementary dated March 17, 2021, entitled Extended Day Program Fees for 2021-2022 be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item L6, memo from the Superintendent of Finance Administration re S&P Global Rating Analysis. Welcome, Superintendent Shimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As is normal, every time at this time of year, the board receives the credit rating report from S&P Global. A credit rating is a current assessment of the credit worthiness of a borrower, and it indicates the capacity and willingness of a borrower to pay the interest and principal in a timely manner. So S&P Global Rating has been completed, and its annual rating of the OCSB has concluded the rating opinion in respect of the board's long-term debenture issue, which is related to our sinking funds coming due next year. The detailed report is included in your agenda, but summarizes the overall rating as an A+ stable outlook, which is unchanged from last year's rating. And it is the highest rating that's presently available to school boards, given that school boards are so tightly aligned with the province of Ontario rating, which carries that very same rating. So that is my report, and I'm pleased to take any questions at this time.
Sorry. Thanks very much, Superintendent Shimmons. Trustee Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Superintendent Shimmons. Is S&P the major rating service, and who arranges for them? Is this something the province does, and then the rating service shows us what the rating is, or do we engage them, or how does that work? Thanks.
Thank you for that question. Through you, Mr. Chair. S&P is one of the 4 major rating services that do ratings on the various provinces. The province doesn't look after engaging them. We actually engage them ourselves every year, and that was part of the arrangement when we went into the sinking fund debenture issue in 2002.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. In the report, is there consideration for the risk of an interest rate increase over the next year? Was there any mention of that possibly impacting?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. They do look at up to a 2-year outlook when they're assessing the board's ability to pay the outstanding debt and the interest payments that are due. They would likely consider the sensitivity of interest rates in the next 2 years in their outlook. Right now, for all of the reasons listed in the report, it's actually a very good report if you had an opportunity to read it through compared to last year's. They were both good reports, but it's really changed in the format that it has been written. So they've indicated our ability to pay, our liquidity, and they heavily indicate in the report how highly education is ranked in the provincial provincial return of the economy, and the importance that has been placed on funding school boards. So as the interest rates go up, that's more related to the province ability to fund us as opposed to our individual ability.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Coburn and Trustee Simpson. Again. The memorandum from the Superintendent of Finance and Administration dated March 17th, 2021, entitled S&P Global Ratings Analysis be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. No new business, no notice of motions. Can I get someone to move the motion to confirmation of the action report, please? Trustee Moore and Trustee Lawrence. That the action report covering the period of March 9th, 2021 be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Inquiries and administrative announcements. Mr. D'Amico?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Adjournment until April 27th. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee McEwen, seconded by Trustee Simpson. That the regular board meeting of March 23rd, 2021 be adjourned at 8:41 p.m. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.